The digital unknown. The night I first ventured into the dark web, the world outside my window was engulfed in an inky blackness, a mirror to the abyss I was about to plunge into. My name, my real name, doesn't matter. In the realms I was eager to explore, identities were fluid, and secrecy was sacred. I had always prided myself on being rational, a skeptic who laughed off ghost stories and scorned conspiracy theories. But the dark web whispered of knowledge and sights beyond the mundane, a digital Pandora's box. Its lore was a siren song, luring me with the promise of hidden truths and forbidden thrills. I convinced myself that my motives were purely academic, a lie I needed to believe to proceed. With a cocktail of excitement and apprehension churning in my gut, I followed the meticulously documented steps to access this shadowy counterpart of the internet. Each click felt like a descent into a deeper layer of Dante's Inferno, the air around me growing colder with anticipation. I won't bore you with the technicalities of my journey there. Those are details you can find elsewhere, narrated by voices far more experienced than mine. What matters is the moment I found myself standing at the threshold of a realm that defied the rules of my reality, my cursor hovering over a link labeled "The Gateway to Truth." It was a chat room, or so it seemed, an innocuous entry point to the uninitiated. But within its digital walls, I would encounter a terror that would shatter my world, blurring the lines between the seen and the unseen, between sanity and madness. The initial interface was disappointingly mundane, almost laughable in its simplicity. Text on a black background, a list of usernames whispering secrets in the dark. I introduced myself with a nondescript alias, a mask among masks, and was greeted with silence. Then, a private message materialized, as if the darkness itself whispered in my ear. "You seek the truth. Are you prepared to face it?" My fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Prepared? I wasn't even sure what I was preparing for. Yet curiosity, a force I'd underestimated, propelled me forward. "Yes," I typed back, my heart racing with a mix of fear and anticipation. The chat room came alive. Messages began to scroll, faster than I could read. Cryptic sentences, coordinates, links to documents, and files I dared not open. It was as if my affirmation had unlocked a floodgate. Among the chaos, one message stood out, its sender simply named Guide. "Follow the rabbit," it read, followed by a link. A test, perhaps, or a trap. But what is a thriller without its descent into madness? I clicked the link. What loaded was a page blank, but for a countdown and a message. Watch, learn, transform. The countdown ended, and the first video began to play. The content was innocuous at first. Clips of crowded cities, natural landscapes, a world pulsing with life. But as the video progressed, the imagery began to shift subtly. Shadows where there shouldn't be, figures lurking just out of focus, whispers in the background noise. It was unnerving, a sense of being watched settling over me. The final scene of the first video was a door, slightly ajar, light flickering from within. The whispering grew louder, urging me forward, into the unknown. And then it stopped, the screen going black, the silence in my room deafening. My rational mind screamed to shut it down, to walk away from this madness. But beneath the fear, a deeper, darker part of me needed to know. What was behind the door? What was the truth they promised? I replied, "Yes," and the second video began to play. The descent continued, each video drawing me deeper into a labyrinth of horror that twisted my perception of reality. The boundary between the digital shadows and my own psyche blurred, a sense of impending doom closing in. As the videos progressed, they grew more disturbing, more personal. One depicted a scene eerily reminiscent of my childhood neighborhood. Another whispered my deepest fears back to me, fears I'd never voiced. How could they know? Was it a guess? A lucky shot in the dark, or something more? By the time the final video was cued, I was no longer sure what was real and what was manipulation. The line between the observer and the observed had vanished, and I was left feeling exposed, vulnerable to unseen eyes that seemed to know me better than I knew myself. The final video began without preamble, a stark contrast to the escalating dread of its predecessors. This time, the screen displayed a single word in blood-red letters: truth. Then, blackness, a void that seemed to stretch indefinitely before me. My room felt colder, the edges of my vision dimming as if the darkness from the screen was leaching into reality. A voice, neither male nor female, began to speak from the void, its tone devoid of emotion. You sought the truth. The truth is not a destination, but a journey that requires sacrifice. Look. The screen flickered to life, showing images that were impossible, nightmarish. Scenes of unspeakable acts, humanity stripped of its veneer of civilization, plunged into primal, chaotic darkness. I wanted to look away, to deny what I was seeing, but I couldn't. It was as if my gaze was locked onto the horrors unfolding before me. Between the scenes, the voice continued, "Truth is subjective, shaped by perception. Your perception has been sheltered, limited. You've seen the surface. Now, you're seeing the depths. Do you understand?" I didn't. How could anyone understand madness? The videos were a descent into anarchy, a world without rules, where the darkest aspects of human nature were not only exposed, but celebrated. The final scene was the most disturbing. It showed a mirror, or what seemed to be a mirror, reflecting not the room it stood in, but a different space altogether. A room shrouded in shadows, with a figure seated before a computer. It took me a moment, heart racing, to realize the figure was me. "This is your truth," the voice intoned, as the scene zoomed in on the reflected figure's face. My face, twisted in a rictus of horror and fascination. "You are part of this now. The abyss gazes into you as you gaze into it." The video ended abruptly, leaving me in a silence so profound it felt like a physical presence. I was alone, but the feeling of being watched persisted, a nagging suspicion that the boundary between my world and the one I'd glimpsed was thinner than I'd imagined. In the days that followed, I tried to forget what I'd seen, to dismiss it as a trick, a well-crafted manipulation designed to scare. But the images haunted me, emerging in my dreams, distorting my reflections in mirrors and windows. Messages continued to appear from Guide, each more cryptic than the last, suggesting that my journey was not over, that there was more to learn, more truths to uncover. But I had seen enough. I wanted out, to return to my life before the dark web, before the revelation that had shattered my understanding of the world. The decision to disconnect was easy to make, but impossible to implement. Each attempt to extricate myself from the shadowy tendrils of the dark web felt like wading through quicksand. The more I struggled, the deeper I sank. My inbox was flooded with cryptic warnings and veiled threats. My computer seemed to operate on its own accord, and the line between the digital and the physical world blurred until I could no longer tell them apart. Sleep became elusive, a fleeting comfort interrupted by nightmares that left me gasping for air. The figures from the videos, the unspeakable horrors, pursued me into my dreams, whispering that there was no turning back, that I was irrevocably changed. The mirror in my room, once a mundane piece of furniture, became a source of dread, a gateway that seemed to mock my plight with my own haunted reflection. Desperation led me to seek help, but how could I explain my predicament without sounding mad? The police dismissed my concerns, attributing them to stress and an overactive imagination. Friends and family listened with growing concern, their expressions a mix of pity and disbelief. I was alone, trapped in a web of my own making. The realization that the videos were not merely recordings, but windows, and perhaps even doors, into something much darker and more real than I had imagined, was the final blow. The boundaries I had relied on to define my reality had been erased. The horrors I had witnessed on the screen had found a way into my world, or perhaps I had stepped into theirs. In my darkest moments, I wondered if the only escape was to embrace the madness, to become a part of the chaos that had consumed my life. It was a thought that terrified me more than any video, any whisper in the dark. But surrender was not an option. I clung to the fragments of my sanity, searching for a way to sever the connection that had become my curse. My salvation came in the form of an old friend, a hacker who listened to my story without judgment and agreed to help. Together, we purged my digital footprint, erased every trace of my journey into the abyss, and implemented safeguards to prevent further intrusion. It was a long and arduous process, fraught with setbacks and moments of despair, but eventually, the nightmares receded, the whispers quieted, and my life began to resemble something normal. But the scars remained, invisible but indelible marks on my psyche. I learned to avoid mirrors, to ignore the occasional flicker of my screen, the odd message that slipped through the cracks. The dark web, with its promises and perils, became a distant memory, a chapter of my life I sought to forget, but knew I never would. The truth, I realized, is a double-edged sword, capable of enlightening as much as it is of destroying. My curiosity had led me down a path from which there was no return, a journey that revealed the depths of human depravity and the fragility of the veneer we call reality. In seeking the truth, I had found my own darkness and, in the process, lost a part of myself that I would never reclaim. The dark web remains a shadowy realm where truths and horrors coexist, a reminder of the thin line between curiosity and madness. I share my story not as a warning, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a declaration that even in the face of unimaginable horror, it is possible to find your way back to the light. And so, the story ends, not with a conclusion, but with a continuation, a life forever altered, walking the tightrope between the seen and the unseen, the known and the unknowable. The dark web is out there, a realm of shadows and whispers, but I have closed the door, never to return. The Gauntlet's shadow. The day the dark web beckoned wasn't extraordinary, not at first glance. I'm Alex Mercer, a name well regarded in cybersecurity circles for a knack in unmasking digital phantoms, a skill I've honed over countless digital confrontations. Yet none prepared me for the enigma I stumbled upon, a coded invitation, embedded deep within what seemed like routine cyber debris, whispering of a realm where light dared not tread. A journey awaits where shadows reign, it teased, veiled within layers of encryption that defied ordinary scrutiny. To most, it would appear a mere glitch, a forgotten fragment of code. But to me, it was a gauntlet thrown by the digital abyss itself. Compelled by a curiosity that had been both boon and bane throughout my career, I accepted the challenge. With meticulous precautions, fortifying my digital defenses, I embarked on a path less trodden, convincing myself of the nobility of my quest for knowledge, all the while ignoring the primal thrill that whispered of dangers untold. Navigating the dark web is akin to walking a tightrope in the void, blindfolded. The invitation led me through digital labyrinths, each more complex than the last. It was an odyssey that tested every ounce of my expertise, culminating at a portal that seemed to exist in defiance of digital laws, a site that was a masterstroke of paradox, a haven that was at once nowhere and everywhere. Upon entry, a stark, minimalist interface greeted me. Central to its design was a prompt that seemed to recognize me, offering entry without credentials. "Enter to begin," it beckoned. In that moment, standing on the precipice of the unknown, I hesitated, but only for a moment. What awaited was a digital coliseum, an arena that promised a confluence of the digital and the tangible. The Gauntlet, it proclaimed itself, a domain where the stakes were as real as they were virtual, where failure bore consequences reaching beyond the confines of the screen. The rules were deceptively simple. Survive a series of trials designed to test not just skill, but will. Success promised enlightenment, a deeper dive into the web's most guarded secrets. Failure, however, threatened to blur the lines between the virtual and the real, to bring the game into my world in ways ominously left to the imagination. With each step forward, the trials became intensely personal, mining the depths of my fears, my secrets. It was as if the game had an intimate knowledge of my psyche, leveraging it to craft challenges that questioned not just my abilities, but my very morals. I found myself confronting digital manifestations of my darkest moments, forced to navigate moral quandaries that seemed tailored to my soul's vulnerabilities. The realization dawned on me, chilling in its clarity. This was no mere game. It was a psychological crucible, designed to dismantle its players, to expose the fragility of the barriers we erect between our digital selves and our flesh and blood realities. The final trial was a nightmare made manifest. My home, my sanctuary, was suddenly vulnerable, exposed to unseen watchers. The game had breached the sanctum, turning its gaze upon those I held dear. The task was clear yet unthinkable. Erase my digital existence to protect my physical one, to vanish from the digital world, to become a specter. The decision was agony, but necessity lent me clarity. I waged a war of bites and wills, a frantic effort to sever the tendrils that the game had wrapped around my life. It was a battle fought in the shadows of cyberspace, a test of every skill I had ever learned and some I had never wished to. In the end, victory was bittersweet. My digital presence was eradicated, a price paid for the safety of my loved ones. I emerged from the ordeal a changed man, wary of the shadows that lurk behind the screen, of the thin veil that separates our digital facades from our vulnerable flesh. The experience left scars, unseen but deeply felt. I had glimpsed the abyss, the dark potential of the digital realm to transcend its boundaries, to reach out with cold fingers into our lives. My tale is a caution, a reminder of the depth of the dark web's reach, a testament to the resilience required to face it and emerge, if not unscathed, then at least whole. This story, a journey into the heart of digital darkness and back, serves as a parable for our times, a narrative that blurs the lines between the seen and the unseen, between the hunter and the hunted in the vast wilderness of the web. The Whisper Network. My name is Zayne, an oddity even before my story began. My life was unremarkable, ensconced in the mundane routine of a data analyst by day and a solitary gamer by night. My only escape from the monotony was my insatiable curiosity for the fringes of the internet, a place where I believed the last vestiges of mystery and adventure lay hidden. The dark web was a legend, whispered about in hushed tones on the forums I frequented. I knew of its dangers, the warnings clear and unambiguous, but the allure of the unknown drew me in, a moth to the digital flame. My first foray was cautious, armed with layers of anonymity. I found marketplaces, forums, and libraries filled with the forbidden and the lost. It was exhilarating, a secret world laid bare before me, yet I craved more. My downfall began with a message, simple and seductive. Discover what lies beyond the veil. The Whisper Network awaits. The Whisper Network was elusive, a shadow network rumored to exist on the fringes of the dark web, a place where the deepest secrets of the universe were said to be shared among the chosen few. The invitation was cryptic, a series of puzzles that led me deeper into the web's labyrinthine depths. Each solution revealed a new layer, a step closer to the network, and a step further from the world I knew. The final puzzle was a mirror, not of glass, but of data, reflecting my digital soul back at me. It asked for trust, for the surrender of my digital identity as the key to the Whisper Network. The moment I complied, my world changed. The screen before me dissolved into whispers, voices without form, sharing secrets that twisted my perception of reality. I had crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back. The Whisper Network was not a place, but a collective consciousness, connected by the dark tendrils of the web. The whispers were seductive, offering knowledge forbidden and profound. I learned of governments toppling in silence, of ancient rites reborn, of sciences so advanced they seemed like magic. But as I delved deeper, the whispers grew darker, tales of sacrifices made in the name of knowledge, of minds shattered by truths too vast to bear. I became obsessed, my waking hours consumed by the whispers. My job, my health, my connections to the real world all faded into insignificance. The network demanded more, a deeper integration into its shadowy fold. It promised enlightenment at a price I was increasingly willing to pay. The final secret of the Whisper Network was a revelation that would grant me sight beyond sight, knowledge beyond understanding. But the price was my essence, my very being. I hesitated, on the brink of an abyss that promised wonders and horrors in equal measure. It was then that the whispers turned to screams, a cacophony of voices that filled my mind with their terror and pain. I realized too late that the network was not a guardian of secrets, but a prison for souls lost to their own curiosity, bound together in eternal torment. In my desperation, I sought escape, but the network was inescapable, a part of me as much as I had become a part of it. My final act, this narrative, is a warning scribed in the margins of the web, a digital message in a bottle cast into the sea of information. To those who find my story, know that the dark web holds wonders and horrors beyond comprehension, but its deepest secrets are not worth the price of admission. The Whisper Network is a siren song, leading only to madness and despair. Heed my warning. Stay in the light, for the shadows are deeper than you can imagine, and they are hungry.